I was standing in a break room that smelled like burnt coffee and industrial soap, staring at a vending machine that kept eating my dollar bills. It was one of those ordinary workdays where nothing is supposed to happen. People complain about the weather. Someone's radio plays too quietly in the background. You make a mental note to pick up milk on the way home. Then my phone buzzed. I assumed it was a text from my daughter about homework or a reminder from my calendar. I glanced at the screen and saw a voicemail notification instead. That was the first odd thing. My daughter, Lily, almost never left voicemails. If she couldn't reach me, she would send a short message like, "Call when you can." She'd learned my routine without anyone teaching her. I was careful about returning calls when I stepped away from a job site. She was careful about not interrupting. I put my hand on the phone like it might calm me down through the glass. And then I pressed play. "Dad, please come," she whispered. There was a pause, like she was trying not to breathe. "I'm not safe. I'm hiding." And then the line went quiet. No background noise, no laughter, no wind. Just that thin electronic silence you get when a recording ends too early. I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't yell. I didn't pace. I just stood there, staring at the vending machine, watching its little spiral coils hold candy bars like nothing in the world could change. A few hours later, I would be arguing with a deputy on a gravel road while a white van sat near a cabin like it belonged there. But in that break room, I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that my daughter had used the word hiding, and that meant someone else was close enough to make her quiet. I put the phone to my ear again and replayed it once, not because I thought I'd misheard her, but because my brain was trying to keep the moment contained, like repeating it would turn it into something manageable. It didn't. I called her back immediately, straight to voicemail. I called again, same. My hands didn't shake at first. That came later while I was dialing my mother-in-law's landline and listening to it ring into nothing. Her name was Teresa Hale. She lived in a cabin about 3 hours north of where we were, tucked into a stretch of forest near the border. The kind of place with one road in and one road out. The kind of place people romanticize until they realize how far it is from help. The line rang, and then the answering machine picked up with its little beep that sounded like it came from another decade. "Teresa, it's me," I said. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. "Lily left me a voicemail. Call me right now." I hung up and looked down at my boots. There was dried mud on the laces from a morning inspection. I remember noticing that, which felt wrong, like my senses were grabbing onto details because the bigger picture was too big. "My name is Ryan Mercer. I investigate industrial accidents for a living. Collapsed scaffolds, chemical exposures, equipment failures. My job is to look at a scene and figure out what happened by following the small things people miss. Patterns, timelines, gaps. 3 years earlier, my wife, Claire, died from a sudden aneurysm. No warning, no slow goodbye. One moment she was laughing at something Lily said, and the next moment the house felt like it had been unplugged. Since then, our life had been built around routines that kept us upright. School drop-offs, grocery lists, laundry on Sundays, quiet evenings where I pretended I wasn't listening for a sound that would never come back. Lily was 12 now, bright, stubborn, and observant in a way that made me choose my words around her. She didn't ask for much, but she noticed everything. 2 weeks earlier, she had asked me to let her visit her grandmother's cabin. "Grandma Teresa's been lonely," she told me at the kitchen table, pencil tapping against her math worksheet. "She says the lake is thawing and the trails are clear again. She wants me to come for a bit." I hesitated, not because I didn't trust Teresa, but because the place was remote. Spotty cell service, long response times, the kind of distance that makes you rethink your confidence. Lily didn't argue. She just looked at me, then looked down at her worksheet. "Mom would want us to show up," she said softly. She didn't say it like a weapon. She said it like a fact. So I drove her up on a Friday, helped patch a section of roof that had been leaking, and carried a box of groceries inside. Teresa moved slower than she used to, but she still had that steady, practical way of doing things. Coffee first, small talk second, feelings last. Her nephew was there too, a man in his early 30s named Evan Hale. Quiet, helpful. The kind of person you barely register in a room because he doesn't ask for attention. I remembered meeting him once at Claire's memorial. He'd blended into the background, said the right things, and left early. That weekend, he was around the cabin doing chores, carrying lumber, fixing a hinge. Nothing that raised alarms, nothing that stuck. On Sunday, when I hugged Lily goodbye, she smelled like pine and shampoo and the faint sweetness of the hot chocolate Teresa made at night. "I'll be back soon," Lily said. She squeezed me once, hard, like she was reminding me she could. Now, in a break room in a city an hour south of my home, I stared at my phone and listened to her voicemail again. I walked out to my truck without finishing the coffee I'd poured. I didn't tell my crew anything detailed. I just said I had to go, and my voice stayed level, like that mattered. When I climbed behind the wheel, I called the county sheriff's office that handled the area near the cabin. "My daughter is at a cabin off Route 19, I said. "She left me a voicemail saying she's hiding and she's not safe." The dispatcher asked questions, calm and practiced. Relationship, name, age, address. I answered each one the way I would answer in an interview. Clean facts, no extra words. "We're sending a deputy," the dispatcher said. "How far out are you?" 2.5 hours, I said, already turning the key. "Drive safely, sir." I didn't promise anything I couldn't keep. I set the phone in the cup holder, face up, like it might light up with her name any second. Then I pulled onto the road, and I waited for it to ring. The first 30 minutes of that drive felt like nothing and everything at the same time. Traffic moved like it always did. People stayed in their lanes. A delivery van signaled and merged. A couple in an SUV argued without realizing anyone could see them. I kept my hands steady on the wheel anyway. 10 and 2. The way my father taught me when I was 16. The way you hold yourself when you are trying not to let your mind run ahead. My phone stayed silent. I called Lily again. Straight to voicemail. I called Teresa again. Same. There is a particular kind of quiet you get when you are driving through thick forest at speed. No street noise, no storefronts, just the tires on pavement and the occasional thump of a patch in the road. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. I used the car's voice controls to call the sheriff's office back and ask for an update. The dispatcher told me an officer was en route. She didn't add anything else. Her tone stayed careful. "Can you confirm the cabin has a landline?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "It always works." "Okay," she replied. "If the deputy can't make contact, we'll escalate." Escalate. It was one of those words agencies use because it sounds like movement, even when nothing has actually happened yet. My mind kept circling around the same few facts. Lily said she was hiding. Lily sounded like she was trying not to be heard. There was no wind, no background noise, no Teresa calling out in the distance. And Lily didn't say, "Grandma." If Teresa had fallen, if there had been an accident, Lily would have said that. She would have described it. She would have asked for help in a different way. This message had been stripped down to the bare minimum, like she'd recorded it with someone nearby. I took the next exit for fuel even though the tank was still half full. It gave me something to do, a task with steps: pull in, pay, fill, wipe the windshield. I watched my reflection in the gas station window. My face looked normal, a little pale maybe, eyes too focused, the kind of look I'd seen on men at accident sites right before the adrenaline wears off. I texted Lily, even though I doubted it would go through. "I'm coming. Stay hidden. Don't leave your hiding place unless you have to. If you can, keep the phone on silent." Then I texted Teresa. "Call me now. Is Lily safe?" No response. Back on the highway, the sky started to shift toward late afternoon. The light changed. Shadows lengthened across the road. I had one of those small, unwanted memories that show up at the worst times. Claire in our kitchen, years ago, holding Lily on her hip. Lily at 3 years old, asking a question that didn't make sense. Claire laughing and saying, "She's going to be too smart for us." Claire had been right. Lily had grown into the kind of kid who noticed when adults lied, even to be kind. She watched people's faces. She remembered offhand comments. She asked questions that didn't have easy answers. That was part of why I trusted her voice message. She wouldn't do this for attention. She wouldn't invent danger. She wouldn't play games with my fear. She would only whisper those words if she meant them. I called the sheriff's office again about an hour later. This time, the dispatcher's tone had shifted. Still calm, but tighter. "Sir, deputies are on scene." "Have they found her?" I asked. There was a short pause. "They found evidence of a disturbance," she said carefully. "We need you to continue to the location, but I want you to drive safely." "What kind of disturbance?" "I can't give details over the phone," she said. "Please keep driving." I kept my eyes on the road. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I had been in enough investigations to know what "can't give details" really meant. It meant blood. It meant someone was hurt. It meant the scene was active and they didn't want to say the wrong thing to a father on a highway. I pushed the truck faster, not reckless, but faster than I should have. I stayed aware of every curve, every car in front of me, every place a state trooper could be sitting. My body felt split in two. One side was driving, the other side was already arriving. The turn onto Route 19 came just as the sun started dropping behind the trees. The forest grew denser. The road narrowed. The shoulders turned to gravel. It was the kind of road that made you feel like you were leaving the world behind. A mile before the cabin turnoff, I saw the lights. Red and blue strobes flashing against pine trunks. A cluster of vehicles in the road. 2 sheriff SUVs, an ambulance, and a white van parked off to the side, plain and quiet, with no flashing lights at all. I knew what that white van usually meant. My truck rolled to a stop without me fully deciding it would. My hands moved before my thoughts caught up. I put it in park. I got out. I left the driver's door open. The cold air hit my face and made everything feel sharper. A deputy stepped toward me with a hand out, not aggressive, just trying to slow me down. "Sir," he said, "you need to—" "My daughter," I said. My voice came out low and flat. "Where is my daughter?" He looked young, maybe mid-20s. He glanced over my shoulder at my truck like he was noting details, plate number, make, and model. Procedure. An older deputy walked up behind him. Broader shoulders, graying hair, tired eyes. The kind of face that had delivered bad news before. "Mr. Mercer?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Deputy Alan Pierce," he said. "We spoke on the phone through dispatch. Where is Lily?" He held my gaze for a long second. Not dramatic, just steady. "We found her alive," he said. My chest loosened by a fraction, a small, involuntary shift, like my body had been holding its breath without permission. "Take me to her," I said. "Before you go in," he replied, "I need you to understand she's been through something." The words were careful, and I understood them too quickly. I didn't say anything. I just nodded once. He walked me toward the cabin. The front door was open. The porch light was on, though it was still light enough outside that it didn't matter. Something about that detail bothered me. Like someone had turned it on earlier and never turned it off. Inside, the air smelled wrong. Not just the stale, damp smell of an old cabin, something metallic, something sharp. The living room looked like it had been shaken, a chair on its side, a lamp smashed, glass on the floor. Then I saw the stretcher. Lily was wrapped in a thermal blanket, but her face was exposed, one eye swollen nearly shut, bruising along her cheek and jaw, a split lip, dried blood near her hairline. Her body was still, too still. A paramedic was checking her vitals, speaking quietly to another medic. I moved to her without thinking, and the deputy didn't stop me. He just stayed close, like he was ready to catch me if I fell. I knelt beside the stretcher. "Lily," I said softly. "It's me. I'm here." Her eyes were open, but they weren't tracking. She stared past me like she was looking through a wall. I touched her hand under the edge of the blanket. It was cold. The medic put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Sir," he said, "we need to move her to the ambulance." "What happened?" I asked. He hesitated, then chose his words the way people do when they want to be honest without breaking you. "Multiple injuries," he said. "We suspect head trauma. She's in shock." "Is she going to live?" "Yes," he said. "She's alive. We just need to get her out of here." I stood and followed the stretcher out. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I kept my eyes on Lily's face, because if I looked away, I felt like something would vanish. As they loaded her into the ambulance, Deputy Pierce leaned closer. We found her under the kitchen floor, he said quietly. In a crawl space. She put herself there. I nodded. I could see it in my mind too easily. Lily making herself small, holding her breath, waiting. "Where's Teresa?" I asked. His expression tightened again. "She's being transported," he said. "She was found behind the cabin, unconscious, severe head injury." The scene shifted around me, like a camera angle changing. This wasn't a random break-in. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't an accident. Someone had come into that cabin and taken control of it, and Lily had survived by thinking faster than an adult. As the ambulance doors closed, I climbed in beside her. I didn't ask permission. No one stopped me. The medic sat across, checking her oxygen, adjusting a monitor. I held Lily's hand and kept my voice low. "You're safe now," I said. "I'm right here." Her eyes didn't move. The ambulance started forward, tires crunching over gravel, and the siren came on a moment later, rising into the trees. I looked down at my daughter, and in that small, bright space inside the ambulance I noticed something I hadn't seen at first. A faint smear of dirt along the edge of her hairline, like she'd pressed her face against the underside of a floorboard, and a thin scratch on her wrist, fresh, like she'd crawled through something tight and rough. She had hidden. She had waited. And whoever did this had not expected her to outthink them. At the hospital, they rolled her away from me the second we arrived. A set of double doors swung closed and the sound of the latch felt final. I stood in the hallway with my hands empty. Then I waited. And my phone buzzed again. The buzz was a call this time, not a message. I looked at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number with a county prefix. I stepped away from the nurse's station before I answered. My voice had to stay usable. "Ryan Mercer," I said. "This is Deputy Pierce," the voice replied. "You're at North Valley Medical, correct?" "Yes." "We need to speak with you in person," he said. "But I want to give you one update now. We couldn't locate Evan Hale." The air in the hallway felt thinner. I kept my eyes on the double doors where Lily had disappeared. "His car?" I asked. "Not on the property," Pierce said. "No sign of forced entry at the cabin either. Doors weren't pried, locks weren't damaged. So whoever came in either had access or was let in, or was already inside." "All right," I said. "What else?" "We'll brief you shortly," Pierce said. "And Mr. Mercer, please do not leave the hospital. Detectives are on the way to talk to you." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, and that part was true. I ended the call and returned to the waiting area. A nurse offered me water. I took it, held the cup, and didn't drink. A few minutes later, a doctor approached with a clipboard, the kind of steady face that doesn't soften until after the facts are out. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I'm Dr. Annika Shaw." I stood, because standing gave my body something to do. "She's alive," Dr. Shaw said. "Her injuries are serious, but we don't believe they're life-threatening." I nodded once. "She has a concussion," she continued. "Bruising, possible rib fractures. We're doing imaging now. She's in shock." "Can I see her?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "We need to stabilize her, and there are additional examinations that are required in cases like this." The words were careful again. Required. Cases like this. I didn't ask her to say it plainly. I already understood. I just looked down at the edge of her clipboard and waited for the next sentence. "She's not speaking," Dr. Shaw said. "That's not uncommon after severe trauma. It doesn't mean she won't. It means her system is protecting her the only way it can right now." "Okay," I said. The nurse beside her gave me a look that suggested I should sit down. I sat. An hour later, Deputy Pierce arrived with two people in plain clothes. One introduced herself as Detective Nina Park from Seattle. The other stayed slightly behind, scanning the room without making it obvious. Detective Park didn't waste words. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I'm sorry. I need to ask you questions while everything is still fresh." "Go ahead," I said. She asked about the trip up, when I dropped Lily off, who was present, where everyone slept, any recent conflicts, any unusual calls, any reason someone might target my family. I answered in order, keeping it simple. When Park asked about Evan, I paused. "I met him once before this," I said. "At my wife's memorial. He didn't stand out." Did he have access to Lily's phone? She asked. I don't know, I said. But he was in the cabin. He was around. Park nodded like she was filing that away. And Teresa, she said. Your mother-in-law, she invited him up. She said he stopped by, I replied. She called it a visit, like it was normal. Park glanced toward her partner, then back to me. We need to consider that he may have been the person your daughter was hiding from, she said. We also need to consider someone else and why he's gone. Find him, I said. I kept my voice level. It wasn't a demand, it was a statement of necessity. We're trying, Park said. But there's something else. You've called dispatch multiple times, you drove here fast. You arrived before our second unit. If you leave the hospital or take actions that interfere with the search, it complicates everything. I looked at her for a moment. I'm not interfering, I said. I'm her father. She held my gaze. I know, she said. That's why I'm saying it now, before someone has to say it later. After they left, the waiting became its own kind of work. I watched the clock. I listened for footsteps. I took notes in my phone because my head didn't feel reliable anymore. Times, names, what each person said, what they didn't say. At 2:14 a.m., a nurse told me Teresa had made it out of surgery. Alive, a skull fracture, swelling, a long road ahead. She had not woken up yet. At 3:02 a.m., Dr. Shaw returned and told me Lily was stable enough to move to a secured pediatric room. At 3:20 a.m., they finally let me in. The lights were low. Machines made small, regular sounds. Lily lay on her side, face turned slightly toward the wall, as if even in sleep she was trying to shrink away from the world. I sat in the chair beside her bed and placed my hand on the blanket near her wrist. I didn't touch her skin. I didn't want to startle her if she surfaced. I stayed there until morning. By noon, another detective arrived with a small evidence bag and a plastic phone case. This is your daughter's phone, he said. It was found at the cabin. I took it carefully. The screen was cracked along one corner. Was the voicemail time-stamped? I asked. Yes, he said, and we pulled the tower data that exists in that area. Minimal, but enough to confirm it originated near the cabin. That detail settled something in me. Not relief, not yet. Just confirmation. The detective hesitated, then added, Mr. Mercer, we also need to prepare you for the fact that we're treating this as a sexual assault. I nodded. My face stayed still. My body felt like it was holding itself together with thin wire. When he left, I stepped into the bathroom and washed my hands for a long time, like I could scrub information off my skin. After that, I did what I do when there's a scene and the official timeline isn't moving fast enough. I made a list. Step 1. Lock down Lily's safety. Real security, not hope. Step 2. Map every known movement at the cabin, including Evans. Step 3. Find what systems can't lie. Phones, locks, cameras, receipts, logs. That afternoon, I hired a private security firm to station a guard outside Lily's hospital room, and that evening, while Lily slept, I placed one more call, this time to a man a co-worker had used during an insurance fraud investigation. His name was Marcus Keene, former federal, now private. He met me the next morning in the hospital cafeteria. He didn't try to comfort me. He didn't ask how I was holding up. He just slid into the seat across from me and waited. I told him only what he needed. He listened, then said, The missing nephew is the hinge point. I can run him fast, but I need permission, and I need speed. Do it, I said, whatever it costs. Marcus nodded once, like he'd already expected that answer. Then he opened a thin folder and placed it on the table between us. There's something you should see first, he said. On the top page was a printed report with a name and a date I didn't recognize yet. And beneath that, a line that made my throat tighten without changing my expression. Previous complaint. Sealed disposition. I looked up at Marcus. He didn't explain. He just let the paperwork speak. I opened the folder. The folder smelled like printer ink and cheap paper, the kind you get from a rush job. I turned the first page over slowly, not because I was trying to build suspense, but because my hands were finally starting to shake and I didn't want Marcus to see it. The name at the top was Evan Hale. Below it was a juvenile case number and a short summary that didn't bother with adjectives. Assault, sexual misconduct. A sealed disposition that read like an administrative convenience. I kept reading. Dates, a diversion program. A record that had been put away instead of handled. Marcus watched me like he was watching a gauge. "Does Seattle PD know?" I asked. "They might," he said. "But sealed records don't always surface in the first pass. And even when they do, families with money tend to have a way of slowing things down." I turned to the next page. 3 civil complaints from California. 2 withdrawn. 1 resolved quietly. No criminal charges. The pattern wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was routine. I closed the folder and set it down flat. "How quickly can you find him?" I asked. Marcus didn't promise anything. "I can move faster than the official process," he said. "But I need something. A place he'd go. A person who'd help him. A reason he'd stay local instead of crossing state lines." I thought about Teresa's cabin. The remoteness. The limited cell coverage. The landline that should have been answered. And the fact that there were no signs of forced entry. "He didn't break in," I said. "He belonged there." Marcus nodded once. "So he ran from a place where he felt safe. That usually means he ran toward another place that feels safe. His family." The word sat between us. "Who are they?" I asked. Marcus opened his notebook. "Teresa Hale's side, right?" "Yes." "Any major property? Any family business?" he asked. I exhaled through my nose. "They have money, timber, old land. Claire mentioned it once, years ago, like it didn't matter." "It matters now," Marcus said. He asked for names, addresses, anything I could remember. I gave him what I had, and I hated how little it was. When he stood to leave, he paused. "I'll tell you something straight," he said. "This kind of person doesn't disappear alone. Someone protects him. Sometimes it's not even loyalty. Sometimes it's just habit." I watched him walk out of the cafeteria. Then I went back upstairs and sat beside Lily's bed. She was sleeping, but not peacefully. Her eyebrows would tighten for a second, then release. Her fingers twitched under the blanket as if she was still making herself small. I stayed there until her breathing evened out again. That night, Detective Park called me. Her tone was clipped, professional. "We located Evan's vehicle," she said. "Where?" I asked. "Abandoned south of the county line," she replied. "No sign of him. We've issued alerts. We're bringing in additional resources." "Do you have a direction?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "And Mr. Mercer, I'm going to say this again. Please do not take independent action." I didn't argue with her. I didn't reassure her either. "I'm at the hospital," I said. "That's where I'll be." I ended the call and sat still for a long time with my phone in my hand, screen dark. Then I opened my notes and added a 4th line. Step 4. Identify who benefits from him staying hidden. The next morning, Marcus returned. He didn't sit down right away. He slid into the chair and placed 2 printouts on the tray table beside Lily's bed, careful not to disturb her. "The Hales have a family property," he said quietly, "about an hour north of the cabin. Not just a house, a compound setup, private road, gate, staff. It's not advertised, but it's on tax records." I looked at the printouts. A satellite image, a legal parcel map, multiple structures, a long driveway that disappeared into trees. Marcus pointed to the map without touching it. "If Evan is anywhere, it's there. That's the place that has insulation, people, resources, lawyers." I stared at the aerial photo. From above, it looked peaceful, neat, controlled, like nothing bad could happen inside its borders. "How do you know he's there?" I asked. "I don't," Marcus said. "Not yet. But I know what these families do when the walls start closing in. They pull the problem inward." He hesitated, then added, "I also spoke to someone who used to work security there." "Security?" I asked. "It's not a formal company," he said. "It's family staff, longtime employees, people who don't talk." I kept my voice low. "Will he talk to you?" "For the right amount," Marcus replied. "Set it up," I said. 2 evenings later, Marcus took me to a parking garage downtown. It was the kind of place with bad lighting and clean concrete, echoing every footstep like it was doing it on purpose. A man was waiting near a pillar, hands in his jacket pockets, late 40s, heavy build, eyes that kept moving. "This is Grant," Marcus said. Grant used to run access and monitoring at the Hale property. Grant didn't shake my hand. He just looked at me, then toward Marcus. "Your guy said you're not police," Grant said. "I'm not," I replied. Grant's eyes flicked toward my face again. "Good. Police ask questions like they're writing a report. You're asking like you already know the answer." I didn't respond. Grant pulled out his phone and opened a notes app, then angled it so I could read without him handing it over. "There are 2 entrances," he said. "Main gate and service access. Main gate has cameras. Service access has a keypad. The family changes codes, but they do it the same way every time." "How?" I asked. Grant looked past me at the empty garage ramp. "Birthdays," he said. "Old habits. They think it's clever." He scrolled and showed a list of dates. Then he said the part that mattered most. "The back side of the property touches federal forest," he continued. "No fence. They rely on terrain and motion sensors, and those sensors haven't been updated in years." Marcus watched me closely like he was measuring my reaction. I kept my eyes on the screen. Grant added one more detail, almost casually. "They're hosting a family event this weekend," he said. "Big one. Lots of cars. Lots of movement. Their attention won't be on the edges." I listened, and I let that information settle into its place like a piece clicking into a puzzle. Not excitement, not anger, clarity. Back at the hospital later that night, Lily woke for a few minutes. Her eyes opened and found mine, slow and careful, like she wasn't sure the room was real. I leaned forward slightly so she didn't have to move. "Hi," I said. Her voice was barely there. "He's gone?" "For now," I said. "But you're here." She stared at the blanket. Her fingers tightened once. "He said nobody would believe me," she whispered. "I believe you," I said. "I believed you the second I heard your voice." She didn't cry, she didn't collapse. She just breathed in, held it, then let it out. Then she said, very quietly, "Don't let them hide him." I didn't answer right away. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened my notes. Then I added a final line under the steps, simple and plain. Rule: no noise, no rush, only proof. I put the phone face down, then I waited. By Friday, the plan in my head wasn't a plan to storm anything. It was a plan to document, verify, and hand off. I'd learned a long time ago that people who rely on money and silence don't fear emotion. They fear records, they fear timelines, they fear the moment when a neutral third party can confirm what they tried to bury. Marcus came to the hospital with a small stack of materials, all cleanly labeled. Nothing dramatic, no photos meant to shock, just structure. A printout of Evan's known addresses in the last 10 years, pulled from databases that didn't care about family names. A list of civil settlements tied to the same law firm, the kind of pattern that only shows up when you stop looking at cases one by one. A short memo from Grant describing the property layout, the entrances, the outdated motion sensor system, and the code pattern. Grant wouldn't go on record yet, but Marcus had him on a recorded call agreeing to provide testimony if subpoenaed. And most importantly, Marcus had one more thing: a digital copy of an email thread from 4 years earlier between Claire and Evan's mother. Claire asking careful questions, Evan's mother replying with legal threats and denials that were too specific to be casual. I read the thread twice, slowly, in the quiet of Lily's room while she slept. Claire had seen something. She'd tried to push against it. Then she'd stopped. Maybe she'd decided she couldn't win. Maybe she'd decided we were safer pretending it wasn't real. I sat there and felt something settle in me, not rage, just a kind of old regret that had nowhere to go. At noon, Detective Park showed up again, this time with someone I hadn't met yet, a man in a suit who introduced himself as an assistant prosecutor assigned to the case. They asked me to walk them through everything from Lily's initial request to visit to the day I dropped her off to the voicemail. I did it in order. When I finished, Marcus spoke. He didn't posture, He didn't oversell, he just slid the packet across the table. "This is what we've pulled independently," he said. "Public records, civil patterns, and a cooperative witness with direct knowledge of their security setup." Detective Park's eyes moved over the pages. Her expression didn't change, but her attention sharpened. "This helps," she said. The prosecutor tapped the email thread with a pen. "This helps a lot. What happens now?" I asked. He answered like someone who lived in procedures. "We move for a warrant," he said. "We don't need your opinions. We need probable cause and credible information. This adds to it." Detective Park looked at me. "And this is where I'm asking you again, Mr. Mercer, do not go near that property." "I won't," I said. She held my gaze for a moment, like she was deciding whether she believed me. Then she nodded once and stood. Saturday evening arrived quietly. Lily had been moved to a private trauma facility with better security, and she was finally eating small meals again. She spoke in short bursts, then went quiet, like she had a limited supply of words and she didn't want to waste them. Before I left her room, I sat beside her bed and folded a small blanket at the foot the way Claire used to. Lily watched my hands. "Are they really going to find him?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I didn't add anything else. She swallowed. "Don't let them talk their way out." "I won't," I said. That was the only promise I allowed myself. I didn't drive north. I didn't walk into a gate. I did what Detective Park and the prosecutor told me to do. I stayed in Seattle. I waited. At 9:36 p.m., Detective Park called. Her voice was lower than usual, like she was speaking from inside a car. "We're in position," she said. "We have a signed warrant." My hand tightened around the phone. "Is he there?" A short pause. "We believe so," she said. "We have eyes on him." I closed my eyes once, briefly, not for drama, just to keep myself steady. "Where are you?" she asked. "At home," I said. "Phone on, I'm available." "Good," she replied. "Do not move." At 10:11 p.m., she called again. "We made contact," she said. He tried to deny everything. He asked for a lawyer immediately. "And?" I asked. "And we secured devices," she said. "Multiple. We also secured a locked room in one of the guest buildings. We're processing it now." Her tone stayed controlled, but there was something in it I recognized. Momentum. At 10:47 p.m., the prosecutor called me directly. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "we need you to come to a controlled location for identification." "Where?" I asked. He gave me an address that wasn't the Hale property, a nearby sheriff's substation. "Bring ID," he said, "and be prepared for questions." I drove there in silence, no music, no calls, just the sound of tires and my own breathing. When I arrived, Detective Park met me outside and walked me in through a side door. The building smelled like old carpet and copier toner. In a small interview room, Evan sat at a table with his hands cuffed in front of him. His hair looked messy. His face looked pale in fluorescent light. He didn't look powerful. He looked like a man who had relied on other people to clean up after him. He lifted his eyes when I walked in. For a second, he stared as if he couldn't decide whether to act familiar or act offended or act like he didn't know me. Detective Park didn't give him space to perform. "Evan Hale," she said. "This is Ryan Mercer, confirming identity." I didn't speak. I just looked at him, then nodded once to Park. "Yes," I said. "That's him." Evan's jaw tightened. He glanced at his attorney who had just entered the room and then back at me. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. I didn't respond to the words. I responded to the reality. Detective Park set a phone on the table inside an evidence bag. "We recovered this tonight," she said. "We also recovered additional devices. And we have a statement from Lily. We're done negotiating." Evan's face shifted just slightly, a crack in the mask. I watched it happen without moving. Then I sat down across from him, not close, not threatening, just present, and I said the only thing I needed to say, calmly. "You don't get to decide what's a mistake anymore." Detective Park stood by the door. The prosecutor opened a file. The attorney started talking all at once. I kept my hands folded on the table. Then I waited. The next few hours were paperwork, plain and heavy. A tech from Digital Forensics arrived with a rolling case, set it down like it was routine, and started cataloging devices in front of everyone. Each item got a number. Each number got a time. Each time got a signature. Evan's attorney tried to talk over it, tried to frame it as harassment, as a misunderstanding, as an overreaction. Detective Park didn't debate. She didn't argue feelings. She stayed inside the facts. At 2:18 p.m. on Tuesday, she said, looking at her notes, Mr. Hale's vehicle is captured on a county traffic camera leaving the general area of the cabin. The attorney opened his mouth. Park continued anyway. At 2:41 p.m., your client's phone stops pinging normally and goes into intermittent airplane mode activity. That doesn't happen by accident. She slid a printed log across the table, the kind that looks boring until you know what it means. The prosecutor added, "We also have a voicemail from Lily Mercer recorded at the cabin location at 12:06 p.m. That voicemail is preserved. It's been duplicated. It's already in evidence." Evans stared at the tabletop, jaw working like he was chewing something that wasn't there. The attorney shifted tactics. "My client isn't obligated to speak. He's invoking his rights." "Of course," the prosecutor said, still calm. "We're not relying on his words." Then he opened another folder. They had taken Lily's statement earlier that day with a trauma specialist present. They didn't ask her to perform. They didn't push for unnecessary detail. They documented what mattered. Time, sequence, identification. The prosecutor read a small portion of it out loud, not for drama, just to place it in the record. Evan's face went white at his own name on the page. Detective Park added the next piece, and I watched Evan's shoulders tense before she even finished. "We executed the warrant at the family property," she said. "We recovered a locked room in the guest building. Inside were items that appear to be trophies. Clothing, jewelry, photos." The attorney stood halfway. "Alleged." Park looked at him. "Cataloged," she corrected. "Photographed, bagged, logged." Then she turned back to Evan. "And we recovered a laptop and a phone hidden in a ceiling panel," she said. "Not your everyday storage choice." The forensic tech spoke for the first time. His voice was neutral, almost bored. "Device encryption is weak," he said. "We already have partial access, enough to see folders containing videos and image files. We haven't reviewed content beyond confirming existence and timestamps. That's standard." Evan blinked fast, like the room was too bright. I didn't feel satisfaction. What I felt was something quieter. Gravity. Once evidence has numbers and signatures, it stops being a story someone can out-talk. The prosecutor looked at me then. "Mr. Mercer, you'll likely be asked to testify about the voicemail and your actions that day. That's later. For tonight, we need you to stay available and keep your phone on." I nodded. Detective Park walked me out into the hallway. The building was quieter now. A printer hummed somewhere behind a closed door. Someone laughed in a distant room, the way cops sometimes do when they're tired and trying to stay human. Park stopped near a water fountain and lowered her voice. "I need you to understand what happens next," she said. "He'll get arraigned. Bail will be argued. We'll oppose it hard. But we're going to do this cleanly." "Cleanly is fine," I said. She studied my face for a moment. "You brought us useful material," she said. "The email thread from your wife, the witness about the gate codes. That helped us move faster." I nodded again. My throat felt tight, but my voice stayed steady. "My daughter asked me not to let them hide him," I said. "That's all this is." Park's expression softened, just slightly. "We're not hiding him," she said. "And he's not just facing charges for what happened at that cabin." She didn't need to say more. The locked room, the hidden devices, the dated folders. I understood the shape of it. I drove back to my apartment in the early hours, the city empty in a way it rarely is. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. When I got home, I walked straight to the kitchen and wiped the counter with a paper towel that didn't need to be used. Then I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The simple steps helped. Water, heat, wait. My phone buzzed once more while the kettle warmed. It was Marcus. "They got him?" he asked. "They got him," I said. There was a pause on the line, and then Marcus spoke quietly. "Now, you keep doing the same thing," he said. "Show up, tell the truth, let the record hold." "I will," I said. After the call, I stood in my kitchen and listened to the kettle begin to hiss. And for the first time since Lily's voicemail, I let myself believe that the next part, the long part, could happen without me forcing it. I poured the hot water into a mug, held it with both hands, and sat down at the table. Then I waited. 3 months later, the house still felt quieter than it used to, but it no longer felt hollow. Lily came home from the trauma facility on a Wednesday, not with balloons, not with speeches, just a small discharge packet and a list of appointments. The kind of paperwork that looks ordinary until you realize how hard it was to earn. I picked her up in the late afternoon. The air had that early summer smell, warm asphalt and fresh-cut grass. She carried one small bag, a sweatshirt, a notebook, a paperback she'd been rereading for comfort. When she got into the passenger seat, she buckled her seatbelt without looking at me, then stared out the window for a long minute. I didn't fill the silence. I just started the engine and pulled out. At home, she walked through the living room slowly, like she was testing whether the space still belonged to her. She didn't comment on the photos or the furniture. She went straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stood there with the door open. "What are you looking for?" I asked. She shrugged. "Just checking." I nodded. "Okay." That night, I made pasta, nothing fancy. We ate at the table. She took small bites, paused, then took another. Halfway through, she set her fork down and asked a question without looking up. "Is he still in jail?" "Yes," I said. "Can he get out?" "No," I replied. "Not right now, and the prosecutor is pushing hard to keep it that way." She nodded once, like she was filing it away with the other facts she needed to hold. The legal process moved the way legal processes do. Slow, methodical, sometimes frustrating, but it moved. The evidence recovered from the family property didn't stay a rumor. It became exhibits, logs, timestamps, third-party confirmations. The voicemail Lily left me was entered into evidence early. Her therapist helped her prepare for what it meant to have her voice played in a courtroom. On the day it happened, Lily sat in a private room off the hallway with noise-canceling headphones while it played. She didn't watch. She didn't need to. The locked room they found led to more victims. Not because the public suddenly cared, but because people saw that the system was finally listening. It's easier to speak when you're not the first one standing alone. The prosecution built the case with timelines and hardware, not with performances. They pulled data from devices. They matched dates to travel records. They matched files to locations. They matched payments to settlements. Evan's family tried to do what families like that always try to do. They hired attorneys. They challenged the warrant. They questioned the witnesses. They tried to make it complicated enough that everyone would get tired. But the record didn't get tired. The judge denied the motions that mattered. The forensic techs kept showing up. The chain of custody stayed intact. Each step was documented and signed. When Lily was ready, she gave a victim statement in a closed session, not in front of cameras, not in front of a crowd. Just the judge, the attorneys, and a recorder. Her voice was steady, not loud, not dramatic. She described what happened in plain terms. She described the threats. She described the hiding place. She described how it felt afterward, like she was watching herself from far away. Then she stopped. That was enough. Evan pleaded not guilty at first. Then, after the forensic reports came in and the number of additional victims grew, his attorney shifted toward negotiations. The prosecutor didn't bargain the truth away. They offered a plea that required full admission on record and a sentence that would keep him from ever being near children again. Evan accepted it. On the day the plea was entered, I sat behind Lily in the courtroom. She wore a simple sweater and her hair was tied back. Her hands were folded in her lap, and I could see her thumb rubbing the edge of her sleeve, small and repetitive. When the judge asked Evan if he understood the terms, he answered softly, "Yes." When the judge asked if he admitted to the assault of Lily Mercer, he hesitated, like he still wanted to protect himself from words. Then he said it. "Yes." The judge looked at him for a long moment, then stated the sentence in a level voice. Years, restrictions, registration, no parole for a long stretch. Conditions written in ink, not promises. I didn't feel relief in a big way. I felt the room settle. Afterward, Lily and I didn't talk much in the car. We drove home in afternoon traffic. A dog stuck its head out a window at a red light. Someone cut in without signaling. The world kept being the world. That night, Lily asked me if we could go see her mother's grave. We went the next morning, early, before the cemetery filled up. The grass was still damp. The air smelled clean. Lily stood beside the headstone and traced the engraved letters with one finger. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. I stayed back a step and let her have space. Lily didn't say she was okay. She didn't pretend. She didn't summarize the last months like a neat ending. She just stood there and breathed. Then she turned toward me. "I'm still here," she said. I nodded. "I know." On the way home, she asked to stop for tea. We sat in a small place with chipped tables and soft music. She stirred honey into her cup and watched it dissolve. After a while, she said, "Do you remember the voicemail?" "Yes," I said. "Sometimes I hear it in my head," she admitted, "but I also remember that you came." I kept my hands around my cup. "I'll always come," I said. She nodded once and looked out the window again. A week later, Teresa moved out of the cabin area for good. She didn't talk about it like a defeat. She talked about it like a decision. She sold the property and put part of the money into a local support fund for young victims, something practical that would outlast her guilt. Her relationship with Lily was slow to rebuild, and it stayed slow. No forcing it, no family should speeches, just small, steady contact. A card in the mail, a short phone call, a photo of the garden she was planting in her new place. Lily started going back to school part-time. The first day, she asked me to walk her to the front doors. I did. We didn't make a scene. I didn't give her a speech. I just stood beside her until she nodded and went in. That evening, she came home, took off her shoes, and put her backpack in the same place by the chair where it used to go. Then she washed her hands without being asked. Later, she sat at the kitchen table and opened her notebook. It was a new one, plain cover, no designs. She began to write. Not a lot. Just a few lines. Then she paused, tapped the pen once, and kept going. That became one of her routines, not a miracle, not a quick fix, just a way to keep moving. For me, life went back to its old shape: work, reports, site visits. But I did it differently. I stopped assuming that the system catches everything on its own. I started noticing the quieter signals, the things people ignore because they don't want to get involved. A neighbor who doesn't let their kid answer the door anymore. A teacher who looks tired when a certain name comes up. A friend who makes a joke too quickly when something serious is mentioned. A few weeks after Lily came home, I got a call from a man I barely knew, a friend of a friend. He spoke quietly, like he was embarrassed to ask. "Can I run something by you?" he said. "It's about my niece. She left a message that didn't sound right." I didn't promise him I could fix it. I didn't tell him what to feel. I just said, "Tell me exactly what she said, and don't delete anything." Because sometimes the first step is simply keeping the record intact. If you made it this far, thanks for spending your time with me. If you enjoyed this kind of calm, true-to-life storytelling, you can like the video and subscribe, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. 2 popular stories will appear on your screen next, and I'll see you in the next one.